Hey, it's me, Sophie B, and I have a hot beauty take for you today. I am quite truly going to Spartan kick a hornet's nest with this one, but I promised you that I would never gatekeep and I would always try to save you money in the beauty arena, and that is what I'm going to do, goddamn. But the dread hour is nigh, and I have to rip the band-aid off and talk about clean beauty, as there's a lot to talk about. The first thing that I want to talk about, and it's something that I've seen all the time in my comments, and people have even just point blank asked me, how do you feel about this? And I've been hesitant to answer, but I'm going to do it now. I'm going to talk about the Yuka app, because a lot of people swear by the Yuka app, and there are pros that I can see to the Yuka app. There are also incredible cons to the Yuka app, and I feel like we need to have a very frank conversation about it. What I don't love about the Yuka app when people use it and swear by it is that what Yuka essentially does is it has certain products flagged, and when you take a picture of an ingredient, it has that ingredient list. If it even detects a line of that product, it instantly flags that entire product and that entire formulation as a bad, toxic formulation, which, let's kind of take a step back there, right? I think a lot of people use Yuka as a way to identify like toxic chemical formulations. I hate to be this person, bestie, but chemicals are everywhere. He, she, we, chemical, they're everywhere. That's unavoidable. So if you're trying to get away from chemicals in your formulations, good luck. But moving on from that, right? When you use the Yuka app and it flags those ingredients, it's not flagging two very important things when it comes to the toxicity of a product or a formulation or even an ingredient in a product, and that is exposure and dosage. These make or break a product's, toxicity. A good exemplar ingredient that I like to bring up in this conversation is benzoyl peroxide. That is one of the most common ingredients, along with salicylic acid, in a lot of acne medications. Panoxyl is a really great example of a benzoyl peroxide ingredient or product, and it is wonderful when it has the proper dosage and when you do not use it for a very long time. Studies have recently come out from the, I believe, FDA this year that has declared benzoyl peroxide as a carcinogen. And like, no dip, right? It's a peroxide. It's a heavy duty ingredient, but what they don't really include in that, it's kind of like fear mongering, in a way, is that the studies that they used for that were people who had been using a product like Panoxyl since they were a preteen in the 80s, and now they're starting to see a bunch of kind of carcinogen linked things, right? You should not be using any kind of really harsh ingredient for that long. Duration and exposure is just like the sun exposure. You should not be getting a shart load of sun exposure all the time, because guess what? That is problematic. And it's the same thing for really heavy duty ingredients too. Exposure is everything. And some ingredients, yeah, you should not have any exposure to them. They are highly deadly, but those are just never going to get put into a cosmetic formula. That would be an instant lawsuit. Along with that, though, dosage is incredibly important too. You can have really toxic dosages of things, and you can have not so toxic dosages of things. It's kind of similar to, I'm trying to think of a good example. I guess the only one I really have is, again, benzoyl peroxide. You can have too high of a dose of benzoyl peroxide where you essentially burn your face, right? And you'll know if the dosage is too high, but you can have a dosage that's just low enough that it does what it needs to do for your skin without actually actively harming anything. So I think it's really important that we acknowledge these kinds of this kind of measurement when we look at things like the Yuka app, because we cannot just flag ingredients as good or bad, because it really depends. Just like people, you can't flag a person as good or bad because you caught them on a bad day versus catching them on a good day. You know, it all depends on the time of day, what's going on in their life, you know, what the situation was. And it's kind of, I guess, a similar metaphor to ingredient. Now, I will say the one thing I really like the Yuka app for is that if you have any kind of allergen, right? So if you are allergic to any kind of like lanolin or any really hyper specific ingredient within cosmetic formulations, it's a wonderful app to help you just quickly determine, is this going to break me out? Is this going to make me, you know, have a whole anaphylactic moment? And It's really wonderful. When you're shopping clean, the other thing that you need to consider is that a lot of clean products just do not have a lot of preservatives in them. For me, as a germaphobe, that is like number one, the kicker for me. Before I even knew about anything with the Yuka app, I knew I didn't love clean products, particularly clean products that were going on my lips, eyes, anything, because they don't have preservatives in them, or they don't have effective preservatives in them. So especially when you're putting it on your eye area, that's a huge red flag. We saw this, a great example, in the Kosas concealer when it first launched. People bought it, loved it, had an amazing time, and then all of a sudden they took it out of their bag and it smelled like shart, right? It's because it went bad, because there wasn't any preservatives in there, because it was a clean formulation. So that is something that I always like to tell anybody who's shopping clean, is if you are shopping clean, you better be using those products all the time on the daily and using them as they expire, because if you don't, they're going to expire so quickly, and then you're running into the possible danger of infecting your eyes, your lips, anything. And the last point I'll make, right, is the price tag. Clean has become a marketing term now, and a lot of brands have used clean as a reason to jack up their prices and products, because they're using more high quality, organic, non-chemical based ingredients, which we already just talked about. Non-chemical based, that's ridiculous. Everything's a chemical, so let's just cut that from the map. Higher end, more organic, just another word for it's going to spoil on you in like 2 weeks. And you just spent $32 for 2 weeks worth of a product that's going to smell like absolute rank coochie by like the third use. And possibly give you pink eye. So again, is it going to justify the price that you're spending for this clean product? Not particularly. Now again, there's nuance here, and I want to say you do not have to agree with me. I think a lot of people, when they switched over to more clean-based products, had a lot of luck with them. So I'm not saying that there is not something to be said about being a knowledgeable consumer and seeing what is in your formulations and trying to kind of weed out certain things. But I am saying if you're going to use the Yuka app to vilify products and completely cut products out, that is not a very ideal way to shop, because it's all determined on dosage and exposure at the end of the day.